Good morning, dolls, and welcome to Little Gretchen's Workshop. So today I need to go ahead and take care of some unfinished business. When I considered creating the invitations for Marguerite and Sadi's wedding, I actually realized I had never put an address on the rooming house or named it. So today I'm going to make the sign for the rooming house, and I'm going to make a sign for the Dress Shop Dollhouse as well. So I started the process by picking out some numbers for the address on the rooming house. Now I bought these little letters on Minimum World and they were pretty bright gold color, so I really needed to tone those down. So I also picked out all the letters for the name of the rooming house as well. Now, dolls, I didn't have a full plan as to how I was going to create these signs, so I just pulled out some of the scraps that I had from little pieces of previous projects because you know I love to work with some remnants. So I pulled out everything that I thought I might need to create these signs. Now, one of my address plates was already painted, so I added stain to the one that was a natural color, and I will need to allow that to dry before I add the actual numbers to it. Now, I did not show it in this frame, but I did add antique gold rub-and buff to those letters. And here I am adding some little gold nail art studs to the little address plate to look as though they're rivets or nails. I really appreciate having these precision tweezers because it really makes all the difference in the world when placing really tiny objects like this. And I did the exact same thing to the little maroon nameplate and allowed it to dry as well. Now, while the letters, numbers, and the nameplate studs were drying, I thought I would go ahead and start working on the base of the rooming house sign. So I painted this white piece of wood black color as the undertone, and after giving it a couple coats of just a solid black to cover up all of that white, I dry brushed it. And I dry brushed it with a little bit of brown paint. I wanted it to look a little streaky, a little old, kind of weathered, and I also wanted it to kind of possibly mimic the look of an old metal sign, so that maybe it was originally a black color and the brown was sort of the early stages of rust on the sign. Now, although I liked the color of the sign, I felt like it needed some type of border or trim around the edge. So I took a couple of my skinny square wooden dowels and I stained them a brown color. And when the stain was dry, I held the sticks next to the little sign to get a precise measurement of how much I need of the wooden pieces to go all the way around the perimeter of the sign. Now I really want you to take note of my precision calculation and my precision cutting. And dolls, I always want you to be careful and watchful of your hands. This is another instance of me telling you to do as I say and not as I do. This is not a good practice, but the wood was pretty soft and I wasn't really worried about it needing a lot of pressure to get through it. I do believe these pieces were just balsa, so they almost were breakable. But after I cut them and got them to a length that I thought would work for the little sign, I added a very sparing thin bead of glue along the edge, added my wood pieces as my border. And I completed the process until I completed both of the longest sides of the border. Now I allowed those to dry and get firm before I began to cut or size the pieces that are to fit in between along the sides because I wanted it to be a nice, tight, neat fit. Here I am again without measuring, doing my precise calculations and determining where I need to cut the pieces so that they'll fit inside the longest pieces. And it worked out. I did have to create a little extra pressure to make sure the pieces stayed in between, but I did add my tacky glue along the edges. Now I could have used the real Gorilla Wood glue, which would have been great as well. So I set aside the sign to allow the border to dry. Now here's my little address plate. Now that the stain is dry and the studs are dry, I went on to add my little address numbers to the address plate. Now, dolls, you do need to be conscious of spacing, alignment, and symmetry. Now, I didn't use any graph paper or measurements or calculations to put my numbers on. I just kind of tried to line them up with the little gold nail art studs. And I'm kind of laughing that I used them as the standard as to where to place the numbers because I didn't measure to put those on either. But in the end, I was happy with the way it turned out. Now, while I allowed that to dry, I went on to create the attachment for the sign. Now, I decided I wanted to add like hooks to the top of the sign and kind of let the sign hang from those little swinging hooks. I'll show you what I mean in a moment, dolls. Now, again, this wood that I used as my border was pretty soft, so I just need to kind of do starter holes in order for them to attach. Now, I had those tiny little eye hooks that I actually used to make my hangers with. I will leave a link in the description for when I made hangers previously, but I used the screw to just drill it right into the starter hole that I had created with my pin drill, and then twisted them both down until they were secure in the sign. Now for the second part of the sign, it's necessary for me to kind of open the hooks up so that the bottom hooks will hook inside it so the sign will kind of hang and swing. Now I used three of the tiny little pieces of wood to create the portion that I'm going to allow the other hooks to hang from. Now I did do a double bar for the part that I'm actually going to drill the eye hook into, and then the third one to be the actual bracket that's going to attach to the front of the building. Now my original idea was to create the type of bracket where the sign kind of projects out from the side of the building, but I thought that that would be a hazard for getting knocked off, so I decided to make it a different way. So I glued the little pieces together where they created kind of a corner. And after cleaning off the excess glue, I allowed that to dry and I went on to work on the actual name of the rooming house. And I felt like it was important for me to name the rooming house and put the address on so that people wouldn't have difficulty finding the location of Saudi and Marguerite's wedding. So my little rooming house is actually called Hazel's house. And Hazel was a distant relative of Big Ma, and her house was known in the community as a place where there was always room for one more doll. So now that I've got the name on the sign, it's time for me to go ahead and complete those hooks for the sign to hang on. So I guesstimated where I needed to drill the tiny hole so that the hooks would line up and hang properly. And after trying to figure it out, I decided to just hold the original eye hook over the area that I wanted to drill and just kind of press the wood so I would know where I needed to open it up a little bit. Then I carefully drilled a starter hole so that I could secure my second eye hook. Now you can see from this angle that I'm able to go through two pieces of wood to attach the hanging part of the screw so that I would make sure that it wouldn't split the wood or be weakened because of the weight of the sign. The sign is not heavy, but in theory I felt like it needed to have a denser area to drill the screw for the attachment. Now that my sign is complete, I just want to check it to see if everything fits on there properly, and it does. It's going to hang just like I want it to. Now I do want to distress those hooks a little bit because that bright, shiny silver or aluminum looks too new to me. Now, as I mentioned, I wanted this sign to look a little bit old, and I didn't like those silvery hooks. So I went over the hooks of the sign with a little bit of my acrylic paint and alcohol wash, and I felt like that would give the hooks the age or impression that they may be wrought iron hooks rather than some type of aluminum. And after darkening the hooks, I added a little bit of the alcohol and paint wash to the base of the hooks to give the impression that there's some weathering around the hooks, and then I went on to add it around the whole perimeter of the sign and to the letters themselves. And I really am pleased with the way this little sign turned out. I'm really happy with it. I think it looks very authentic. It really does like an old sign that would be on a rooming house. And just when I was finishing up these details to the little sign, I got another idea. So as I was weathering the little address plate with the same alcohol and paint wash, I decided I thought it would look really great if it was actually attached to the sign. So I worked on the little number plate to get it to a look that really looked weathered and old, and then I glued it to the actual sign. At this point, I started to really feel excited about the sign because when I first started this project, I had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew what I wanted it to look like, and I'm really, really happy at the way this turned out. So let me go ahead and make the sign for the dress shop. Now, dolls, when I'm creating like this, I just like to gather together all my options that I think I might use or could use, and I found this really cute ornamental jewelry piece that came in a bundle of "What do you keep in that for?" from my friend Becky. And so I originally thought I wanted to make the sign in a circle, but it was actually too small for all the things I wanted to add to the sign. So I went on and used a bigger piece of wood, which was kind of more of a rectangular straight shape. So I added the little jewelry piece to the top of that. And then I had a little metal ribbon and a few clay buttons that I had made. Now the clay buttons, I was originally going to use them to be crackers for some hors d'oeuvres or finger foods for the reception, but I painted them the antique gold rub and buff color, and I thought they would look really cute on the sign because I was kind of thinking buttons, bows, ribbons. So again, dolls, at this point I'm just freestyling. I'm playing around just to see what might work. So I've got the jewelry piece, I've got the buttons, I've got the bows, and then I've got all these little sparkly like rhinestone pieces that I thought would look kind of interesting. Now, I don't really think they had like light up signs like that back in those times. So I just felt like a sign that would be a little bit reflective with these little sparkly rhinestones would look a little bit Victorian, kind of ornate, overly busy. And yeah, that's my thing. So I thought this was going to work out really well. So little by little, I placed the little iridescent nail art studs along the edge, and I alternated some of the taupe ones with the pink ones with a few of the blue ones just to give a little variation. Really no rhyme or reason, dolls. I'm just playing. Now, after I got all the iridescent stones all the way around the perimeter, I was really feeling good about it. And the sign was looking really cute, but I was like, I need to actually put some words on the sign. So I had a couple ideas about what I thought I wanted it to be named, and the name that I originally wanted, I didn't think it would actually fit on my little sign. So I started out wanting to call the little dress shop Bessie's Buttons and Bows or Bess's Buttons and Bows, and it just was not enough room on the sign. So while I was pondering how I was going to put the name on the sign and what I was going to use, I just added more rhinestones. And as I finished adding the extra rhinestones to the sign, I had a bright idea. I realized I didn't have enough letters from the rooming house sign, but I did have this wonderful gold metallic pen that was sent to me by my friend, and I thought that that would work well. I knew Aunt Bess wouldn't be happy unless her name was on the sign, so I thought this was a funny, really cute play on words. So, dolls, it is not a grammatical error. The name of the dress shop is Bess Dressed. Now, dolls, if you enjoyed this video today, definitely let me know in the comments. And if you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. And always look for me on Mondays and Wednesdays after 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all on the next episode of Little Gretchen's Workshop. Bye-bye now, dolls.